a child to just seek the Lord, to spend that time in His presence. There's a generation that really are needing mothers. We've seen so many of the wrong voices coming to this generation.
Benny Hinn, an Israeli-American televangelist, is a person who enjoys a great deal of popularity among members of the Christian community. Benny appeared to be untouchable with his powerful sermons, miraculous healings, and charismatic television ministry. However, his personal life began to unravel in front of the public eye, and he ultimately became vulnerable. There was a storm brewing in his marriage to Suzanne Hinn, which was taking place behind the scenes of his extravagant ministry. The dissolution of their marriage, which had been applauded as a demonstration of faith in the past, occurred not once, but twice, each time leaving shockwaves in its wake. However, the unexpected revelations that Suzanne made after their second divorce were the ones that truly sent everyone into a state of shock. In this high-profile marriage, what exactly are the secrets that are hidden behind the curtain? The question is, how did one of the most famous televangelists find himself in the middle of scandal after scandal? Let's dive headfirst into this enthralling tale of love, betrayal, and shocking revelations, shall we? The wedding that started a global ministry. Benny Hinn and Suzanne Hawthorne's wedding day was nothing short of a spiritual spectacle. It was a fairy tale wedding that started a global ministry. When the young couple finally tied the knot on August 4, 1979, they stood at the altar and exchanged vows that appeared to be destined to reverberate across other countries. A shared calling to serve God and spread His message in the world was the driving force behind their union, which was a merging of two lives. Suzanne was a woman who was full of life and devotion, and Benny was a young evangelist who had big dreams and an even bigger vision for the ministry. In the beginning of their journey, the couple began with what many people considered to be a divine partnership. Benny, the man whose magnetic sermons and miraculous healing crusades would soon attract millions of people all over the world, had Suzanne as his rock of support. Together, they painted a picture of a marriage that was ordained by God, with a husband who was enthusiastic about leading a dynamic ministry and a wife who was steadfastly by his side. The chemistry between them appeared to be electric, their faith was unwavering, and their mission was crystal clear. On the other hand, as the spotlights were turned down on their public appearances, rumors of difficulty started to surface. It was not an easy task to construct a global televangelist empire, and the foundation of their organization was beginning to show signs of cracking. Not only did Benny's meteoric rise to fame place a tremendous amount of pressure on his shoulders, but it also left Suzanne feeling the same way. Suzanne later admitted that her husband's ambitions frequently left no room for their relationship to flourish, despite the fact that they had prayed together and shared each other's prayers. Long hours, constant travel, and an almost unrelenting demand for financial contributions were all requirements of the ministry, which Benny fervently advocated for through his teachings on the prosperity gospel. Suzanne, on the other hand, started to notice that this gospel was a double-edged sword, one that brought her wealth but also caused her to become estranged from the man she had married. The weight of their expanding ministry was putting an increasing amount of pressure on this couple, despite the fact that they had the entire world at their feet. That the journey from the altar to international fame was not the fairy tale that many people imagined it to be is something that we will soon discover. Behind closed doors, cracks in the perfect picture. What happens when the demands of public ministry come into conflict with the realities of marriage, also known as the perfect picture? The answer, for Benny and Suzanne Hinn, was turmoil, which was concealed behind closed doors and obscured by the gleam of their public persona. As far as the world was concerned, they were the epitome of a Christian couple, bringing salvation to millions of people. However, there was a gradual unraveling of their relationship that was taking place behind the scenes. Because she was married to a pastor, Suzanne's life was anything but typical. As a result of Benny's frequent travels, which included participating in healing crusades and making appearances on television, Suzanne frequently found herself in need of solitude. Benny's performance on the main stage was the centerpiece of her ministry, but she played a supporting role that was nonetheless significant. Suzanne experienced a growing sense of marginalization over the course of her public and private support for him. The gospel of prosperity that Benny preached with such fervor eventually became a source of unease for her. There was more to it than just the money. Despite the fact that Benny's preoccupation with wealth did cause some friction, the emotional and spiritual toll that it took on their family was the focus of this discussion. However, the responsibility of delivering miracles fell squarely on Benny's shoulders, and by extension, Suzanne's shoulders as well. Suzanne witnessed the toll that a lifestyle that promised miracles could take on her. Benny, on the other hand, became completely consumed by the demands of his ministry. He extended the length of his preaching tours and increased the intensity of his focus on fundraising. While the ministry was a divine mission for Benny, it felt like a never-ending marathon with no finish line for Suzanne. Benny perceived the ministry as a divine mission. The number of times that husband and wife were able to connect with one another decreased and became more infrequent. When they did have time together, it frequently turned into conversations about the requirements of the ministry, which left little room for personal connection or emotional intimacy. In the end, Suzanne started to experience feelings of not only being neglected, but also being invisible in a relationship that was so complicated. After some time had passed, she compared their relationship to that of roommates who occasionally prayed together. This was a far cry from the spiritual partnership that they had envisioned for themselves on the day of their wedding. Suzanne felt something completely different, which was that she was lonely, unfulfilled, and emotionally drained. The public saw a power couple leading millions of people, but Suzanne felt something completely different. Although many people in the ministry might be able to relate to it, very few would openly acknowledge that it was a struggle. In spite of the fact that they were largely concealed from view, these cracks would soon become too large to ignore. In 2010, the announcement of the divorce was made like a thunderclap. It was the first autumn of the year. After 30 years of marriage, Suzanne Hinn had submitted her petition for divorce. Their millions of followers were shocked and heartbroken by this news, which was both shocking and heartbreaking. How is it possible for a couple that is so closely associated with steadfastness and faith to fall apart under the pressure of differences that cannot be reconciled? A bleak picture emerged from the legal documents that were submitted to the Orange County Superior Court in the state of California. It was over for Suzanne. Following 30 years of joint ministry and the birth of 4 children, she stated that the reason for the separation was irreconcilable differences. However, the reality that lay beneath those words was a story that was significantly more complicated. Over the course of many years, Suzanne had been struggling with feelings of abandonment and disillusionment. Because of her husband's unwavering commitment to spreading the prosperity gospel, not only had their emotional connection been eroded, but it had also resulted in financial and spiritual complications. Despite the fact that they were constantly surrounded by people, she later described their home life as becoming increasingly lonely, due to the fact that Benny's ministry required him to be away from home for weeks or even months at a time. Suzanne was left to handle the household and the emotional needs of their children on her own. When it came to Benny, the filing came as a complete surprise to him. When he was asked about it in interviews that followed the announcement, he stated that he was shocked and that he had not anticipated it. "It seemed to me that everything was going well," he shared with a close confidant. Although Suzanne had spent countless nights praying for guidance and hoping for change, she ultimately came to the conclusion that leaving was the only option available to her. The public's reaction was swift and polarized. Suzanne's decision had been years in the making. The media, of course, had a field day, dissecting every detail of their marriage and speculating on the reasons behind the split. The divorce also had financial implications. Some supporters offered prayers and words of encouragement, while others criticized Suzanne for walking away from a union that had been blessed by God on multiple occasions. Benny's empire, which was built on the generosity of his followers, suddenly seemed less like a divine calling and more like a fragile house of cards. For Benny, the divorce was not just a personal blow, it was also a professional crisis. The couple's assets, which ranged from real estate worth multiple millions of dollars to funds for the ministry, became a source of contention. His credibility as a preacher was dependent on his image as a family man who was devoted to God and his wife. The divorce cast a long shadow over his ministry, raising questions about his integrity and priorities. One might wonder how a man who preached about the power of God to heal and restore could not maintain his own marriage. After the dust settled, one thing became abundantly clear. The Hinn's divorce was not just the end of a marriage, rather, it was the beginning of a much larger unraveling, one that would impact their ministry, their family, and their legacy in ways that no one could have anticipated. This was a question that many of his followers and critics were unable to ignore. Benny Hinn was the undisputed king of the prosperity gospel for decades. This doctrine promised divine blessings in exchange for financial offerings. His sermons were punctuated with declarations such as, "Sow a seed of $1,000 and watch God multiply it tenfold." The money trail follows Benny Hinn as he explores the nature of the prosperity gospel. Benny's lavish lifestyle, which included private jets, designer suits, and homes worth multiple millions of dollars, became fodder for critics who questioned whether he was truly using donations to further God's work or simply lining his own pockets. However, as his ministry grew, so did the scrutiny and criticism that he received. Many people believed that Benny's prosperity gospel was nothing more than a spiritualized form of financial manipulation. According to reports, Suzanne began to question the path that their ministry had taken. Although she initially supported Benny's teachings, she later expressed discomfort with the excessive focus on money. She reportedly told close friends that you cannot pay for miracles, which was a pointed criticism of the very message that her husband had built his empire on. The financial strain wasn't just external, it was deeply personal. Suzanne revealed that Benny's relentless fundraising efforts often left their family feeling like they were living on borrowed time. The pressure to maintain the ministry's opulent image took a toll on their relationship, creating a rift that no amount of money could bridge. Despite the criticism, Benny did not apologize and defended his teachings by arguing that they were biblically sound. He argued that financial blessings were a natural consequence of faith and obedience. However, as we will see in the following chapter, the prosperity gospel was not only a source of contention between Benny and Suzanne, it was also a significant factor in their eventual reconciliation. An unexpected turn of events occurred just as it appeared that the story of the hymn had reached its conclusion. In 2013, after 3 years of being apart, Benny and Suzanne shocked the world by announcing their reconciliation. This was a moment that many people saw as a demonstration of the power of faith, forgiveness, and divine intervention. Benny, overcome with emotion, described their reunion as a miracle that only God could have orchestrated. Their remarriage was nothing short of grand. The ceremony, which was held in front of family, friends, and ministry leaders, was a public declaration of their renewed commitment to one another. Suzanne, too, expressed the hope that this second chance would be different. However, what has changed? Benny stated that during their time apart, they had engaged in a period of profound introspection and repentance. He admitted that he had made mistakes and made a commitment to put the needs of his family and Suzanne ahead of the demands of his ministry. For Suzanne, the reconciliation was not just about forgiveness. It was about reclaiming the partnership that they had lost. However, the public continued to be skeptical. Critics questioned whether the reunion was genuine or a calculated move to restore Benny's tarnished reputation. After all, his ministry had suffered significant financial losses during their separation, and some speculated that the remarriage was as much about saving face as it was about love. Despite the cynicism, the Hinns seemed determined to make it work. They spoke openly about the lessons they had learned and their renewed commitment to each other and their faith. But as we'll soon see, even the most heartfelt vows couldn't shield them from the challenges that lay ahead. Shadows return, the second divorce. The joy of Benny and Suzanne's reconciliation seemed to signal a new beginning, but beneath the surface, the shadows of their past never truly disappeared. By 2023, just a decade after their highly publicized remarriage, Suzanne had filed for divorce once more. This time, there were no grand declarations, no attempts at reconciliation, just a quiet, final severance of their tumultuous bond. The world watched, stunned, as one of Christianity's most high-profile couples ended their marriage for good. What went wrong? Although Suzanne did not publicly disclose every detail, those who were privy to the situation hinted at the recurrence of familiar patterns. Benny's unrelenting focus on ministry and his teachings on the prosperity gospel once again took precedence over their marriage. By the time Suzanne filed for the second divorce, the couple was reportedly living more than 60 miles apart, with Benny residing in Palm Coast, Florida, and Suzanne residing in Longwood. This distance, both physically and emotionally, added to the tension that she was experiencing. The emotional void that she had struggled with during their first divorce had returned, and it was more pronounced than it had ever been. This separation was more than just a matter of geographical distance. It highlighted a growing chasm in their relationship that neither of them was able to bridge. The second divorce brought up questions that many people who follow the Hinn ministry found difficult to ignore. How was it possible for a marriage that had been re-established through what Benny referred to as divine intervention to fall apart once more? Did their initial reconciliation truly address the issues that were at the heart of the conflict, or was it merely a temporary truce? For Suzanne, this second filing was a statement, a declaration of her need to prioritize her own emotional and spiritual well-being. Benny Hinn's personal life became the center of a public scandal that sent shockwaves through his ministry. Allegations of an affair with fellow televangelist Paula White emerged, further complicating his already fraught personal and professional life. She had fought for her marriage once before, but this time she chose to walk away, leaving behind a legacy of faith, fame, and profound heartache. Scandals unveiled, allegations of infidelity. As if the pain of divorce wasn't enough, Benny Hinn's personal life became the center of infidelity. The tabloids were relentless in their examination of every aspect of their relationship, and the National Enquirer even reported that the two had spent 3 nights together in a 5-star hotel that had been booked under an alias. The photographs of Benny and Paula holding hands while leaving a luxury hotel sparked a media firestorm. Many people felt that these allegations were a betrayal of the principles that Benny had spent decades preaching. Both Benny and Paula vehemently denied the rumors. Benny insisted that their relationship was strictly platonic, claiming that they had met to discuss ministry matters and a joint project involving donations for the Vatican's art collection. Paula also denied the allegations. Paula echoed his sentiments and stated emphatically, "There is nothing immoral or inappropriate about our friendship." However, the damage had already been done, and Suzanne's silence on the matter only served to fuel speculation. In the case of a man whose ministry was dependent on moral authority, the allegations were devastating. Was the scandal the final straw that led to the second divorce, or had the cracks in their marriage simply widened to the point where there was no turning back? The scandal served as a stark reminder of the price of fame and the vulnerabilities that come with living a life that is constantly under scrutiny. Even if the allegations were not true, the optics of the situation were damning. Many of Benny's followers began to question his integrity, and his detractors found fresh ammunition to discredit him. For Benny, it marked another turning point in his already embattled career, a moment that would leave lasting scars on his reputation. Suzanne breaks her silence. After years of staying in the background, Suzanne Hinn finally stepped forward to share her side of the story. Her revelations were raw, heartfelt, and deeply illuminating, shedding light on the struggles she had endured during her decades-long marriage to Benny. In interviews and private conversations, Suzanne spoke candidly about the emotional toll of being married to a man whose ministry often took precedence over their relationship. According to her, it wasn't just about the money or the fame, but rather about feeling invisible, as though her needs and opinions never mattered. Suzanne also touched on the spiritual challenges she faced as the wife of one of the world's most famous televangelists. Suzanne admitted in a later interview that when you are constantly expected to perform miracles or inspire faith in others, you start to lose sight of your own faith. Her words painted a picture of a woman who had sacrificed a lot for her marriage and her family, only to find herself becoming increasingly isolated. Benny's prosperity gospel brought financial blessings to their ministry, but it also increased the amount of pressure that they were under. Suzanne's decision to speak out was not simply about airing grievances, rather, it was about reclaiming her narrative. Her honesty struck a chord with many people, particularly women who were in situations that were similar to hers. She became a voice for those who felt trapped in relationships in which their emotional needs were overshadowed by external obligations. She had been defined for far too long by her role as Benny Hinn's wife. Now, she was stepping into her own identity, offering a perspective that had been overshadowed for a significantly longer period of time by her husband's larger-than-life persona. As the personal drama between Benny and Suzanne unfolded, its impact on Benny's ministry became impossible to ignore. What had once been a flourishing empire of faith was now a crumbling edifice, weighed down by scandal, financial troubles, and dwindling trust. Donors, once eager to support Benny's prosperity gospel, began to pull back. Questions about the ministry's finances, already a point of contention, became even more pronounced. The fallout was equally severe within the Christian community, with prominent leaders distancing themselves from Benny because they were unwilling to be associated with the controversies that surrounded him. Critics accused Benny of exploiting the faith of his followers for personal gain, pointing to his lavish lifestyle as evidence. In addition, the general public became increasingly disillusioned, with many people wondering how a man of God could allow his personal life to spiral so dramatically. For Benny, the ministry was not only his life's work, it was also his identity. The decline of his influence was a deeply personal blow, one that left him struggling with feelings of failure and regret. The decline of the ministry served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of intertwining faith with fame. He admitted in interviews that he had made mistakes, both in his ministry and in his personal life. However, his attempts to repair the damage frequently rang hollow, as they did not address the more fundamental issues that had led to the crisis. The story of Benny and Suzanne Hinn is not just one of marital strife. Rather, it is a profound reflection on the challenges that are faced by those who are in positions of spiritual leadership. It was a reminder that even the most seemingly unshakable empires can crumble under the weight of their own contradictions. Their journey teaches valuable lessons, not only for couples in ministry, but also for anyone who is navigating the complexities of faith, family, and ambition. One of the most striking lessons that can be learned from their story is the significance of maintaining a balance. For Benny, the demands of his ministry frequently overshadowed his responsibilities as a husband and father. Suzanne experienced feelings of neglect and emotional exhaustion as a result of the pressure she felt to support her husband's calling. Their struggles highlight the necessity for spiritual leaders to prioritize prioritize their personal relationships even in the midst of the demands of public ministry. Additionally, their story highlights the dangers of unchecked ambition. In spite of the fact that Benny's unrelenting pursuit of financial success through the prosperity gospel brought him fame and fortune, it also caused a rift in his marriage and alienated many of his followers. Suzanne's discomfort with the gospel's focus on money serves as a reminder that genuine faith cannot be purchased or sold. Rather, it must be cultivated through genuine connection and humility. Finally, the journey that the Hills have taken is a demonstration of the power of forgiveness and resiliency. Although their marriage did not last, the fact that they made an effort to reconcile their differences and were willing to acknowledge their errors demonstrates that even in the face of failure, there is always room for growth and redemption. The road ahead. As Benny and Suzanne continue on their separate paths, the question that remains is, what does the future hold for each of them? Benny's road ahead is fraught with difficulties. Suzanne's road ahead is relatively straightforward. His ministry, which was once a global powerhouse, is currently struggling to regain its former glory. He has publicly vowed to refocus on spreading the gospel, but his reputation is still tarnished, and the scars of his personal and professional failures are still fresh. Suzanne, on the other hand, has embraced a life that is quieter and more reflective. Her journey is one of healing and self-discovery, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. For both Benny and Suzanne, their story serves as a powerful reminder that even the public figures are, at their core, human. She has found solace in reconnecting with herself and her faith, which has allowed her to find solace in relief from the pressures of her marriage. Their triumphs and failures, their joys and sorrows, are a reflection of the complexities of life and faith. The question of whether they find redemption or continue to be defined by their struggles is a question that can only be answered by time. However, one thing is certain: their story has left an indelible mark on the Christian community, sparking conversations about faith, forgiveness, and the true meaning of ministry. This is a legacy that will continue to reverberate long after the last chapter has been written. It is a call to reflection on what the Hinn saga teaches us. From their fairy tale wedding to two painful divorces, Benny and Suzanne Hinn's lives have been marked by love, ambition, betrayal, and faith. The saga of Benny and Suzanne Hinn is more than a drama worthy of being published in a tabloid. It is a window into the struggles that even the most devout among us face. But what does it all mean? For Benny, it's a story about unbridled ambition and the perils of putting ministry ahead of relationships. His prosperity gospel, which appealed to millions of people, turned out to be a double-edged sword, one that brought him fame but also caused him to become estranged from his family. The story of Suzanne, on the other hand, is one of quiet perseverance and eventual empowerment. She reclaimed her voice and her life by making the decision to leave, and their journey together offers lessons that can be applied to everyone. The significance of maintaining a healthy equilibrium, the necessity of placing relationships ahead of success, and the power of forgiveness, not only for other people, but also for ourselves. However, the question that really matters is this: the Hinn saga forces us to confront our own expectations, reminding us that even the most iconic figures are human, capable of both great faith and great flaws. How do we, as a society, view spiritual leaders? Do we put them on pedestals, only to tear them down when they find themselves in a position of failure? It is certain that Benny and Suzanne's legacy will continue to spark conversations about faith, fame, and the thin line that separates them. Perhaps, in their struggles, we will find the courage to examine our own lives more closely. This is something that is certain as their story draws to a close. What does this mean for us? Should we be inspired, cautious, or simply curious? That is something that each of us must decide for ourselves. What is certain, however, is that their story, which is messy, human, and profoundly real, will continue to be etched in the collective memory of the Christian world for many years to come. This much is certain: